and welcome to the Hybrid School Builders Podcast. I am your host, Rebecca Foley, and I am so glad you are joining me today. I am a fellow grassroots founder who is hoping to make your journey toward founding a sustainable hybrid school a little bit easier. If you are dreaming of starting a hybrid school, or perhaps you've already gotten started, you are in the right place. Join me as we dive into real stories, practical tips, and hard-won lessons that I have learned to help you launch and grow your program with confidence. Remember, building a hybrid school is not just about creating a business or creating jobs. It's not even about just serving the children who attend the program. It's literally about reshaping the landscape of education, and we can do that one community, one entrepreneur, and one program at a time. Hey guys, so in this episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about staffing infrastructure. So obviously, to have a program, you need your curriculum and you need to have it structured in a way that you can partner with the parents and work it out in the hybrid model. You also need staffing to be adequate to do your school days, okay? So that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about, all right? Now, the most obvious part of staffing is going to be your teachers who are going to be in the classroom with the kids delivering the curriculum. All right, so just a couple things about that is, and I'm going to do more episodes about hiring and training, but you need to hire and you need to train. And that doesn't end there. So once you've hired and you've gone through trainings, which is why your philosophy and your pedagogy and all of that is very important for you to understand. You then need to continue to supervise and coach. Coaching is a good word. Kind of manage to ensure the quality of the programming, make sure that they have everything they need. They're continuing to be trained. They have the support they need, and you are there for them. Okay. That's very important. So what I call that is like a supervisor role. And that's, you could call it a manager or it's a program director. It could be, I'm going to say it's usually, I'm not sure if it's usually, but the person who also really understands the curriculum well and why you're doing what you're doing, right? So like in our program, the Charlotte Mason model is so important. It's like part of why we're doing what we're doing, a huge part of it in combination with being a hybrid model. So supervising the teachers and the teachers delivering the curriculum and the curriculum itself is all informed by the Charlotte Mason method. So that's really important for the supervisor to understand because they're kind of acting as like a quality control on the final delivery in the classroom and even in like the communication with the parents at home. Okay. So that supervisor needs to be confident in that, but then they also need to make sure that the training is happening very thoroughly and that they are present. They're checking in with the teachers proactively. They're helping them work through troubles. They're supporting them, making sure they have the resources they need. They're looking for any gaps in anything that they might need in the future. They're making sure they have the support, like practical support they need, as well as the training that they need. And they're supervising them in the sense that they're just making sure that they're able to do their job well and that they are doing their job well, okay? They're often also like finding subs, making sure there are subs to find, everybody's favorite job, not just kidding. And so that the program can continue to carry on or making sure the teachers are doing, making sure the teachers have backup people or whatever. Okay, so that's the program supervisor. Often combined with the curriculum person, but doesn't have to be, okay? The curriculum person in a program like a Charlotte Mason program that's not just using like textbooks or like a box curriculum is also a very important role that we should probably talk about because that person is maybe choosing books, overseeing whether they're working in the model, checking with teachers if they're having any trouble implementing them. Okay, that's an important piece. That could be another person, not the teacher supervisor, because that skill set is going to be, like team. They need to be able to like be a team player, but they also need to be a competent leader and director in making sure that they're not getting bowled over by an assertive teacher or someone who's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They need to be able to direct so that the mission is accomplished, right? That's a different skill set than the person who's like doing the curriculum planning. I think so if they're two different people, they need to make sure that they're communicating really well. But it can work where maybe the curriculum person comes in and like does all the trainings on the curriculum and checks in with the teachers on it. That is possible. Okay. Anyway, so you have that program supervisor person. I also highly recommend having an aide if you have any more than 30 students, or even 20 students, because the kids just, especially if they're young kids, they just need a lot of things. Okay. So from pick up and drop off times at the door to, bathroom breaks, to lunchtime and recess duty, to just extra support for certain classes or for little emergencies or for children who are having a hard time, you really want to have an aide. Okay. So just work that into your budget. They should know about safety policies and that kind of thing, and like be able to see what needs to be done and do it. That's what you're looking for in that person. Okay. So that's kind of like your program part, to use the nonprofit language, right? Is the classroom delivery. And so the supervisor is making sure that's happening. The aide is helping. And then, of course, the curriculum planning and supervision needs to happen too. Okay. Those don't all have to be different positions, but the program direction and supervision is certainly a robust job. And then each teacher is busy doing their thing. And then the aide is another job. Okay. Now you step up another level, like organizationally, and then you have all of the like infrastructure, building and maintenance, as far as, legal stuff, compliance stuff, paperwork stuff, financial stuff. That also needs to be happening. Okay. So if you're like a single founder, just one person doing all of this, you probably find yourself doing the program supervision and teacher training and hiring and all of that, and the curriculum planning and all of those program things, plus all of the state stuff and finances and budgeting and money management and payroll and all of that kind of thing. Okay. Which is a lot. It's a lot, especially if the program is a little larger or it's growing quickly. It's a lot to do. It's very helpful to have either two people, unless you're happy to work like a pretty full time, like 40 hours a week at least. It's very helpful to have two people. Okay. So if you have a group of founders, you can split this up depending on what you're good at or how much time you have or whatever. Or you can just go hire out what you need. So again, make sure you're putting this in your budget. Okay. So this administrative director, I'm going to call it an administrative director. Okay. Because let's say that they're just trusting the program supervisor to be in the classroom, checking in with teachers, doing staff meetings, overseeing the training, working with troubleshooting program sort of things and kind of logistical day-to-day things. Now they're doing that every day, and they're freed up to do that if the administrative director is making sure that everybody is getting paid and overseeing payroll, running payroll, making sure the HR systems are set up, making sure the budget is being implemented correctly, making sure the money is coming in and out in a way that can be tracked, make sure the bookkeeping is being done. There's less frequent jobs like the compliance and the paperwork and all of that needs to go into the state. And depending on if you're a for-profit or nonprofit, there's different levels of that. Taxes need to be done. That administrative director is making sure that like undergirding of the program is getting done. Okay. And they're know what needs to be done, and they're making sure it's getting done. Okay. Now, in between those two things, but probably leaning a little bit more into the program side, you may very quickly find yourself needing like a logistical support person. This can be things like building logistics, like where do all the tables and chairs go? Who do we talk to about any kind of special events? This is kind of in the context of a church where you're sharing. Anytime you're sharing, there's like more of that. But it can be true in any kind of building, like the cleaning and the maintenance, and what happens if there's issues with plumbing or someone knocks at the door in the middle of the day and nobody knows who the person is. And, all of that kind of thing is like building logistics, right? And it takes up cleaning itself can take a lot of time. So making sure that people know where the brooms are and, whatever, if you're not hiring it out, which I would recommend just hiring it out and putting it in your budget to pay for it. Okay. But then there's also another program support piece is like secretarial stuff. Because again, it ends up taking a remarkably long time to get things like printed out or making sure somebody knows how to work the printer if you have one on campus, or goes to get stuff printed if you don't have one on the campus, if you need that kind of thing, or forms if you're doing everything online or both or whatever. You know, how to set forms up, how to set up payment things, if you're doing any kind of communication as far as like regular emails or newsletters, that all, or even more yearly things like making sure the class lists are printed out and the teachers all have them, that they have emergency contact things in a folder in their classroom so that it's all ready for them, that it's delivered. Because it's kind of, there can be a breakdown in that where like maybe you collect it, but then it never actually gets like delivered. And it feels like that shouldn't happen, but it just sometimes just falls through the cracks, things like that. So if you have a logistical person who's helping with that, it can be very helpful because they're time-consuming things, okay? That person may or may not also be helping a little bit with some of the administrative support stuff. It can be a similar sort of skill set, but it just depends on like how big your program is, how many hours, and what you've budgeted for and all of that, okay? It's probably pretty realistic to have the logistical person be kind of like an hourly person. Again, depending on how big the program is. If you need another set of hands on campus, they can be there doing that program support stuff, especially if you're larger. And then they can kind of be another body in the building while also working, just being a support person. But you also don't want them sitting there bored all day. So, if there's just a little bit of it or it's pretty seasonal, it's good to just hire someone to be hourly and just give them tasks that need to be done when they need to be done to take it off of your plate, okay? So back to the administrative director part, they may also need support people. Now, a lot of that kind of administrative support ends up getting like contracted out to like, an accounting firm, or you might have an HR, either an online or a person who can help you with like human resources stuff as far as bringing, onboarding employees and making sure they're getting paid and running payroll and all that kind of thing, okay? There's also like money management stuff. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the even higher level, like planning, strategic part last in a minute. But this part is like making sure that the budget is actually being tracked. If you have a particular budget for like, say, classroom supplies, somebody needs to make sure that the teachers are all, depending on how you set it up, the teachers are all getting a budget, and how are they spending it? How is it being tracked? How do they know when they've reached their budget? What happens when they do that? Where's the money coming in and out? Are they getting reimbursed? Blah, 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 that kind of thing. Do you have a credit card? Do you have employee credit cards? Do you have an Amazon business account? There's different ways you can do that practically, but someone needs to be setting it up and overseeing it, making sure things are getting tracked so it doesn't just all get thrown out there and then nobody knows what's happening, okay? The finances are pretty important, especially for a nonprofit, because it's very important to keep your books correctly in the nonprofit way, which is different than the private business way, okay? So HR, business, money management stuff, business oversight kind of things are on the administrative side. A lot of that can be done at home. You don't necessarily have to be there for that, but you do need to be communicating with the program director probably enough that you know what the needs are in your, what's happening, and you can keep track of all of it. But a lot of it can be done from home. So that's a good job for somebody who's good at administrative stuff and, money stuff, or maybe technology stuff from a pretty high responsibility level, but maybe can't be present on campus all of the time. Okay. That was a position that I ended up in because I couldn't be on campus as much as I would have liked to have been because of lack of childcare. And I also am comfortable with money and all of that. And I just learned the technology, much to my frustration sometimes. And so I ended up doing a lot of administrative stuff. Okay. One more thing I wanted to talk about is, and I don't even know what to call this. It's hard to put a word on this, or I would say a job description. And that's it's like the strategizing, the entrepreneurial piece of it. And it's, I suppose in a big business, they might call it risk assessment, resource allocation. it's like deciding, and it's a very entrepreneurial in the sense that you're probably doing it now if you're in the early stages of founding a program, because what you're doing it while you're surveying your market, you're doing it when you're deciding how many classes to launch with, how many classes to grow to, when to do it, when to grow, how much to grow, how fast to grow, if you're growing at all. This is very important in the startup and the growing phases of a program, okay? So the reason it's hard to put your finger on it is because it's pretty light. It can be maybe intuitive. It takes like a business sense and like a strategic sense to like see what the situation is. Take a risk. Do we do this? Do we spend money on this? Do we put the person in? Do we do it now? Do we do it later? What's the prediction of what's going to happen next year? How risky is this? And that's like financial and staffing and all of that. Do we grow now? Do we grow later? Do we grow fast? Do we grow slow? So it's like this resource allocation, like maybe you're paying somebody, it turns out they're doing a lot more than or maybe they're not doing as much as you thought they were going to do, or maybe they're doing way more than what they're really getting paid for. So they really should be getting paid more. They're really valuable. Where's the money going to come from? Maybe you didn't plan for it yet. So now you got to figure it out. There's like this very entrepreneurial strategic piece that goes into like that risk assessment and that resource allocation. Like I said, founder is often doing that as they're starting. You may be like, well, I'm not good at that, or I feel pretty good about that, or I didn't know I was doing that. But it does need to be done by somebody, or it ends up kind of like business decisions can end up being made because if nobody is thinking behind and ahead and like assessing the risk and just deciding when and how and where to do things, okay? Now, the thing with this is it's not really like a position that like lives the program forever. Because especially if once the program gets to a stable, mature size, it's not as necessary. If you're in a nonprofit, the board should be growing into being able to do that kind of strategic planning because they are responsible for the sustainability of the program. And because of that, they really should be doing it, approving it. If you're in a private business, it's kind of what you do as a business owner, okay? So there's a couple different ways to just look at that, but just be aware that it needs to be done by somebody. If there's like a group of you as founders and one of you is like, oh yeah, I see myself doing that. Like I'm already doing it. I'm the person who kind of does that. That's good. If you're in a group and you're like, I don't know, are any of us doing that? It's a good thing, maybe talk about like, who's the person who's kind of like leading the charge on this? Like, is it getting done, or are we just kind of like doing it organically with our conversations and stuff? Just be aware that it needs to happen, okay? As part of your like strategizing. But also be aware, and I'm talking to you if you're somebody who's like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. Like, I like doing that. I feel like I've taken the lead on that. That's what I'm doing. That once the growth happens, sometimes it feels like you're like, oh wait, now what do I do? Because you're like, you've been doing it, and then it's kind of becomes less necessary once maturity happens in the organization. Okay. And there's a couple ways you can take that as far as, what your future role might be just done at that point and say, well, I've served my purpose as far as that goes. But the people who aren't doing it should make sure that they acknowledge that was a very important, highly important job to do. And they need to be done by somebody. If someone's bearing most of the burden of that and the other people are just kind of relying on them for it, because it can be a bit of a thankless job because it's hard to put your finger on it and because it goes obsolete once maturity happens. So make sure that you're just aware of it. And then in the future, that person can be a great consultant for planning and, serving on the board if you're a nonprofit and that kind of thing. And if you're a business owner, you just kind of end up being the business owner. And if that's your strengths, you can kind of just hire out those other parts. And that is you strategizing. Okay. All right. So hopefully that was helpful as far as your staffing infrastructure. And we will continue talking about hiring and employees in the future very soon. Thanks so much for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure you check out the resources I am developing at startahybridSchool.com. Send me an email anytime. I would love to hear from you. Until next time.